How's everyone doing this evening? Good. Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming and participating in this, because you will participate, in this passion project of mine. I'm sure many of you saw the Berkshire Eagle article or the podcast, John Kroll's podcast. And I'm just over the moon about folks having interest in this story and wanting to share it with our community. So I thank those entities for spreading the word. I wanna thank now, because this is the third show, Studio 9 and Fresh Grass and all the people who are associated with this amazing studio for allowing us to come in and, play our reindeer games. I had an encounter in New York City, for the folks who don't know, in the early to mid 90s. I was in a band called Coal Connection, and my manager at the time, Amy Feld, got us tickets to see an Arlo Guthrie show at the Bottom Line in New York City. And I'm like, wow. She's like, would you like to come? I'm like, well, I've always wanted to go to the Bottom Line, and since you didn't book us anywhere tonight, you might as well. So we went there. We were seated at this giant round table, about 8 to 10 folks, and it was reserved, little placard on it. And we were the first folks there, and then the table slowly filled up. And as I glanced up at the door, I saw this woman come through the door with her escort. And I mean, there's something so incredibly regal about this woman and familiar. And I couldn't peg it. I'm like, I know this person. I know it. And I'm just watching her, and I'm tracking her and the attendant, and all of a sudden, they seated her right next to me at this reserved table. Now we were going to see Arlo, and then we're just, I was excited. And I was also very curious as to who this person was that I couldn't conjure at that moment. And as the table filled up, a woman across the table from me pointed at me. She's like, oh, let's do introductions. Why don't you, honey, start, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm Gina Coleman from the Berkshires. And passed it around. And so then it came to this woman who was seated to the right of me. And she said, hello, I'm Odetta. Oh my gosh, pass out moment. And my manager's laughing the whole time because she knew exactly what was going on in my head, and she knew exactly who this woman was from the second, she walked through the door, and she's kicking me underneath the table, and I'm just like, oh my God. And so it was just so cool, and I was just, I could barely contain myself. And just before the show started, this woman from the audience rushes up to our table, to Odetta, and says, do you remember me? Do you remember me? And Odetta looks at her, because her presence was just like so forceful. Just like, child, I'm too old for games. Tell me who you are. Tell me who you are. It's the title of this tribute album. And I was just thinking, oh my gosh, I can't wait to be that age and, and could say whatever I want. I'm not quite there, but I'm still looking forward. So ever since that evening, I've wanted to do a tribute to the great Odetta. One great thing, capstone of that evening, at the end of the show, Arlo asked everyone to stand up and sing his father's tune, This Land Is Your Land. And at that point of the show, I had almost I don't know how, I can't even conceive of this, but I somehow forgotten that she was right next to me. And so when I stood up and I started singing, and then I almost immediately like, ooh, what are you doing? You know? And so then I took a little sideway glance at Odetta, and she locked eyes with me. And she looked at me, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And she just gave me this regal nod of approval. I'm like, wow. And then we locked in to the most amazing harmonies. And it was everything. And for many, many years, I had on my resume sang with Odetta. I think I'm gonna put that back in there.